welcome everyone to this IES webinar, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, Atkins Approach to ED&I on Site. Today I'm delighted to be joined by a number of speakers, as you can see on screen, from the Atkins team. So we have Andrew Doherty, environmental scientist, Jack Keane, assistant environmental consultant, Nyan Mubarak, senior environmental consultant, and Shona Brown, senior hydrogeologist. Today's webinar will give an overview of the journey that the Sustainable Land and Resource Management team at Atkins started in early 2021 to tackle ED&I related issues prevalent in the engineering sector, with a particular focus on making site work more psychologically safe for all. As always, there will be a chance for questions at the end of the presentation, so please do submit these in the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen at any point during the presentation, and I will then ask these on your behalf later on. Thank you very much for logging in today. I'm now going to hand over to our first speaker, Shona, and I'll just get the slides up and ready to go.
Okay, hi everyone. My name's Shona Brown, and I'm going to start off this presentation for you. So this is just our agenda for this talk. So I'm going to start by discussing what ED&I is, and give a little introduction to the ED&I focus group. We're then going to talk a little bit about a survey we did and the results of that survey. We'll then talk about some of the tools that we created based on the results of those surveys to help create a safe, a psychologically safe working environment on our sites. And these include the site charter, some of the site reporting, Toolbox Talks, our ED&I step back cards, and then we'll do a little conclusion at the end. Okay, next slide. So what is ED&I in the workplace? So traditionally, ED&I has stood for equality, diversity and inclusion. However, there's been a move to using the word equity instead of equality. So this picture is something you might have seen before. It gives a good example of the difference between equality and equity. So equality means that we should ensure that all groups of people are treated equally, no matter what their age, sex, or disability. However, treating all people equally may mean that some groups of people or individuals are at a disadvantage. Equity means ensuring that people are treated fairly and impartially and are given the correct tools to reach their potential. So I think this picture gives a good example of how those two words, what those two words mean. So diversity means creating an environment where there is a wide range of backgrounds, and inclusion means creating an environment where everyone feels welcomed and valued. So ED&I is something that Atkins takes quite seriously, and there is a lot of great information and internal policies to ensure that there is an ED&I focus in our day-to-day work. Okay, next slide. So these are the members of our focus group. We all work in the Sustainable Land and Resource Management team at Atkins, where we all carry out quite a lot of site works. These site works can be ground investigations or different types of environmental monitoring, and can mean that we're working either in public areas or on sites which are run by our clients or contractors. This is different from a lot of the other teams at Atkins who can be mainly office-based. The aim of our group is to ensure that ED&I focus, the focus that Atkins has on ED&I in their offices is being transferred over to our clients and contractor sites. This is all of the members of our team, some of who are not doing this presentation today. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how it started. The focus group was first organised when we had a small impromptu poll and discussion within one of our quarterly practice meetings. The results of the poll showed that there appeared to be a big difference in how people felt ED&I issues were being dealt with on sites compared to in the office. People felt that they really didn't know how to report ED&I issues. They also felt that the practice the practices that we were quite rigidly following in the office were not followed as rigidly on site. And shockingly, quite a high proportion of staff had witnessed or been involved with an ED&I issue on site. This quick poll led to the formation of the ED&I focus group, which aimed to tackle some of the site-related issues that had been highlighted. The first step to this was gaining more in-depth information of the incidents that had been highlighted in the poll. So Andrew Doherty is now going to talk to you a bit about the results of the further survey work that we did. Okay, next slide.
Thanks, Shona. So following this informal poll, we created and distributed a survey to the wider team to collect some more detailed information. We had a really good response rate of 49 people from within the team, and that was across all grades of staff as well. It confirmed that the majority had witnessed some form of unacceptable behaviour on site, which reinforced to the focus group that it's an issue really worthy of devoting some time to try and improve. Some of the key trends which then went on to underpin where we wanted to focus our attention within the group were that 75% of respondents had witnessed some form of inappropriate or discriminatory behaviour whilst working on site. 55% of respondents felt that they were comfortable directly challenging inappropriate ED&I related behaviours on site, which of course means that around half of those who responded felt slightly more uncertain about doing so. Slightly more people felt comfortable with the thought of retrospectively reporting an incident after it's occurred. However, only 20% of people felt that there were appropriate or suitable methods and systems currently in place for doing so. Next slide, please. As we hoped when we created the survey, providing people the opportunity to provide some additional comments at the end was really valuable, and we got lots of good information from that. So I've picked out here some of the key themes that are recognised from these responses at the time. Many people noticed that health and safety is seen as a non-negotiable on site, and it has been for a considerable amount of time now. The aim is for ED&I to reach that same status and be seen in the same way as health and safety is. Again, a trend that came through was that there was some uncertainty on how you would report an incident and the best way to do so. And as highlighted in the previous slides, some people would be hesitant in directly challenging unacceptable behaviours on site, and it became apparent from the comments that there was mainly a couple of different reasons for this. So the first is that people can sometimes feel under some pressure, whether that's perceived or legitimate, to just get on with it, not burn bridges, keep clients and subcontractors happy. There's also an aspect of subjectivity, so people are sometimes needing to make judgments on tone or intent behind some potentially inappropriate comments made on site, whether it's something that you would then escalate by challenging it or reporting it, or whether it's something that you would effectively let slide. So next slide, please. So the objective of the focus group then was really to target some of these key concerns. The first is, how can we make people comfortable challenging unacceptable behaviours on site? We know that people feel uncertain in identifying and challenging unacceptable behaviour. We want to try and remove any or reduce any degree of subjectivity and provide staff with the tools and the confidence to challenge inappropriate behaviour directly. So we felt a good way of doing this was by having a common code or set of principles that all site staff and subcontractors, including those at senior level, management level that are working back in the office, have signed up to. So we got to work on producing a site charter with the aim that once this was complete, it can be distributed before site work start, it can be displayed in the site cabins, and everyone can buy into a kind of common set of values prior to mobilising to site. We also created Toolbox Talk templates, which can easily be tailored to specific themes or situations, which can reinforce positive behaviours and generally promote awareness and discussion. So we want everyone to be in no doubt that what behaviours are unacceptable, and that if they take place, they will be challenged accordingly. The second thing we wanted to look at was how we report incidents or provide feedback during site works. To do this, we had to look into how we would currently report an ED&I issue if it occurred in site, whether we can improve it, that process, and can we raise awareness of it so that everyone knows how they would go about following that process. So Jack and Nyan are going to expand on some of these outputs in more detail over the next couple of slides. So I'll hand over to Jack, who'll talk about the charter first of all.
Thanks, Andy. I'm delighted to share with you our site, a poster version of our site charter. Atkins is a diverse company, and it's our hope that promoting this charter, we can enable equitable, diverse, and inclusive behaviours whilst on any of our sites. Next slide, please. So following the results of our survey, we have identified that only 20% felt that there was an appropriate reporting mechanism for ED&I issues. In response to this, we have worked closely with our HR team to clarify the process and issued guidance to the whole business how to report ED&I issues. Finally, we have ensured that all incidents have been appropriately resolved. I'll now hand over to Nyan, who will give you a bit more information on that.
Thanks, Jack. Next slide, please, Ethne. So over the course of 2022, we worked as a team in developing an initial set of 8 Toolbox Talks for a number of issues that we felt were either close to us or dictated by the survey results that Andy alluded to, or were generally relevant to members in our team completing different site works. They weren't intended to be comprehensive in any way, as we all know everyone's affected by different issues or might have a topic more unique to themselves that they wish to discuss on site. Since producing these as an initial batch for the entire sustainable land resource management team to use, we've seen additional ED&I Toolbox Talks from other Atkins colleagues delivered on site on topics such as the impacts of working as a female on male-dominated work sites, provision of a safe working environment for those with disabilities, and working on site as a minority individual. This has helped to show that not only positive uptake of the initial batch of Toolbox Talks that we developed, but also that members of the team or the wider team have had the innovation and confidence to speak out about other ED&I topics, whether they directly impact themselves or not. Next slide, please. One of the outcomes of our collaboration with the wider business was the development of an ED&I step back card, which refers readers to the Atkins Code of Conduct. The step back card is just it's an internal document intended as a prompt to us all, encouraging us to incorporate Atkins ED&I values into everything we do. In different moments or scenarios, which can often go beyond site visits, whether it's in meetings or site offices or client offices, there can always be the opportunity to weave in an action that promotes positive inclusivity to those we're working with. It's a document that's made available to all Atkins staff, and we can refer to it in any given scenario. We recognize that we've all got a duty and responsibility to report in good faith any concerns about the behavior of those we work with. And that's a focus of our code of conduct and is an item that the step back card refers to. Ultimately, though, the step back procedure is just a reminder to all Atkins employees to take a moment to consider our decisions and what we can do to promote positive ED&I behaviors at any level. We've got a duty and responsibility to report in good faith any concerns we have about the behavior of those we work with on site and beyond as well. Next slide, please, Ethne. So, although as a focus group, we've made a lot of progress in terms of understanding some of the ED&I issues that we face and those that we work with also face, we also recognize that there's more we can do to promote and embed psychological safety when we're working on site and beyond. Just a couple of our next steps as a team are to continue our collaboration with the wider Atkins infrastructure business to share ideas on how to promote and embed ED&I wellbeing and safety in a wider context. We also want to further simplify the reporting mechanisms that are available to make it easier for our colleagues to raise such incidents when they occur. We also want to continue to advocate for the development of reasonable adjustments across the wider Atkins business. This can take many forms and is something we're in the process of doing. And last but definitely not least, we also want to inspire others in whatever capacity, whether it's contractors or colleagues or clients or even other consultants that might be listening in right now, to tackle similar ED&I challenges by raising awareness of the work we're doing across the industry. I think as we're coming towards the end of our presentation, we also want to thank everyone who's been able to dial in and listen, and for those who might be listening back, hopefully it's been a bit of a useful insight into just some of the things we've been working on as a team in Atkins to develop our ED&I goals. And I think that's it. Collectively, I think we'll be happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Ethne, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. That was really interesting to hear about the work of Atkins in the ED&I space and what you've been getting up to. I'm going to jump straight into the questions now. I can see we're already getting some through. So to all our attendees, please do drop them in the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. So I'll kick straight off. How do you ensure that you are tackling ED&I challenges that may be experienced with a hybrid working environment? And has there been any key considerations you've had to think about as part of that? Or who's best placed to answer that in the group?
I can take it. I have to say we haven't actually looked at if by hybrid working you mean at home and on site. It's not something that our focus groups really looked at in much detail. We've kind of concentrated on, just because of the way that we work in our team, we felt like where we pulled out that there may be room for improvement was on site, and that's where we focused our attention to improving. But it's a good point.
That makes sense. Thank you, Shona. And another question here, which I'd be really interested to know the answer to as well. You, of course, talked about the importance of buy-in for the kind of contractors and clients on site as well. So it'd be really interesting to know how clients and contractors have responded to things like the site charter and how this works on sites that aren't in Atkins control.
I'll be happy to take that one. We've had quite a few positive responses from both contractors and clients when relaying the site charter on site. I myself have taken part in a progress meeting last month where I shared the charter to the client and contractor, and they received it really well. I know of other colleagues who have deployed it on other projects and sites, and generally so far the feedback has been really positive. It's been one of an issue that has not necessarily been raised on some of these projects before in terms of client and contractor feedback. So quite often they've taken it away as a new item to explore further on projects going forward. So yeah, we've had some really positive feedback so far, and hopefully it will continue that way.
Yeah, I would just add, Nyan, and anytime I've given a Toolbox talk, surprised, the wrong word, I'd say I've been pretty heartened by the response from kind of subcontractors. It's never just the Toolbox talk's been delivered and that's it. It's always sparked a really good and interesting discussion, and I think that's a positive, and I think that's one of the key things to create that environment where people are more comfortable discussing, raising awareness, etc.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Nyan and Andrew. I'd be interested to kind of follow up on what you mentioned about Toolbox Talks there, in terms of how you went about actually putting those together, because obviously there's a number of different kind of ED&I related issues involved. So were these co-created with people that kind of felt an affinity with some of those things being discussed, or how did you go about getting the content right?
So it's a really wide topic, as you can imagine, and it was always going to be a bit tricky to kind of define ED&I into a specific set of Toolbox Talks. At the time when we originally drafted these, they were topics that we and others that had provided us feedback felt were issues that maybe had not been explored on site or discussed much, or general themes that had not necessarily been touched on before. So it was a bit of a combination really between what we felt at the time, knowing that they would evolve and expand in due course, but they were items that at the time were just issues that felt close to us, and based on the feedback we'd received from our internal poll as well, they helped to kind of shape the initial batch. But as I said, there've been quite a few more topics that were developed over the line, and they form a bank that we'll ultimately use for the wider team going forward. So they're always evolving.
Oh, that's
thankfully.
really, yeah, thank you very much. And then some kind of questions that are more specific around the Atkins focus on ED&I, which is, do you have particular KPIs around ED&I related to this work? And if you do you use any do you use any software to measure your progress against these, or any kind of metrics in this space? I see Shona's smiling at that.
No, we don't have specific KPIs for this work that we've been doing, but I think the way that we continue to monitor this is to continue to carry out surveys with the team to see if, the percentages that Andy showed in his slide on reporting, to see if there's been an improvement on the way people feel around reporting ED&I issues on site, and that people are feeling more comfortable, and that we've hopefully seen less incidents out on site than we had in the first poll. So that's the way that we're monitoring things at the moment.
That's really interesting. Really good to hear as well that you are seeing some change filtering through. The IES also did some research about specifically around ethnic diversity in the environment sector, and experiences of people from diverse backgrounds in that space, and that issue of discrimination on site is really a massive one. So it's great to hear that there's some change happening. Related to that, so talking about your site charter, do you include these in your terms and conditions when you actually employ subcontractors?
Yeah, so it's not quite as formal as being explicitly stated in the terms and conditions, but that's definitely something that we're working towards, I think, with the kind of wider business. But yeah, it's definitely something that we've been providing to subcontractors, at the kind of tender stage, encouraging that discussion and ensuring that they're happy to adhere to and take on those kind of values and principles.
And related to that question, so you talked a bit about kind of that reporting mechanism and how people can feel confident kind of reporting different incidents. Do you also have a kind of structure in place for actually dealing with those incidents that are reported, and how you kind of escalate them or take them forward?
Yeah, I could take this. So there's actually quite a good example that someone might be able to give recently of a particular incident. But effectively, when the incident's reported, it's through the same mechanism as we would use to report health and safety incidents. It's just tweaked slightly to make clear that it's a ED&I incident. Everyone knows the importance it's placed in health and safety, so it's raised in the exact same way, kind of immediately to senior management. There's an investigation done. There's a resolution put in place, and it's closed off once all that's been put in place. So yeah, it's something that's automatically escalated. It's also something, it's not just negative behaviours. If there's been a particularly positive behaviour on site, or someone's witnessed some good examples, or a Toolbox Talks went down particularly well, we want to encourage people to promote kind of positive observations as well to reinforce that behaviour. And again, that's raised in the exact same way to ensure that the learning can be shared from it, or people can get recognition for good work as well.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you, Andrew. Another quick question about kind of site-specific work. So Nyan, I don't know if you'll be best placed to answer this one, which is, do you have site-specific ED&I advice or plans which kind of consider the key issues that each individual site may experience, or is it more broad for just kind of all different sites that you work on?
So from my experience, it's a more broad topic. It forms part of our standard kind of health and safety documentation prior to mobilizing to site. And then it's obviously discussed once we're there in the form of Toolbox Talks and as part of the induction process. So in a general sense, yeah, it would be a more broad kind of document and feature of our works on site. As Andy touched on, it started to form part of the kind of early phase process in bids and tenders with contractors and clients, so they're aware of it kind of earlier in the process. But generally, as part of our focus group, it's kind of targeted more towards delivery on site, i.e. once we're already there. I don't know if that quite answers your question. Hopefully, I've angled it enough to answer enough.
I'll add something to it as well, though. I think the way that you would tailor the approach to individual sites would be choosing the specific Toolbox Talks, for example, that you would want to give on those sites based on maybe incidents that have happened on the site or the group of people who are working there. So I think that's a way that you can tailor your approach.
Great, thanks both. That's really useful. If you don't mind, got time for a couple more questions. You've gone through a lot today, so thank you for that. Related back to the kind of reporting and escalation of incidents, Andrew, that you were mentioning, when an ED&I incident is raised through the HSE reporting tool, who is actually responsible for completing the corrective action? Does that fall under HR usually, or the HSE team?
So yeah, without being involved in the process, once it's actually escalated, my understanding is that it's effectively the senior management within our infrastructure team, or if it's reported through another part of the business, senior management within that part of the business. As part of their resolution or investigation into it, they would, very likely or potentially involve HR and the HSE team, depending what the incident is. But ultimately, to ensure it's resolved, it kind of sits with the senior management within the appropriate business unit.
Great, thank you. And then I think a nice question to end this on, and maybe and all or any of you can come in on this one, whoever would like to. So if you were starting from the beginning again with your ED&I journey at Atkins, what have you learned now that you would do differently in the future? And Shona, I don't know if I'll start with you.
Yeah, I can start with that. Actually, I think before we started this process, I would have been quite nervous to bring up ED&I issues on site. And going through this process and working with some of our contractors, it's really just shown that it's something that everybody's interested in and actually wants to improve in their workplace. So in some environments, I maybe would have been scared to bring these sorts of topics up. It's actually given me the confidence to do that. And I think that's something that has really changed through this process.
Can't put it any better than that.
I think
Any other thoughts?
just to add really quickly onto what Shona said, the kind of response and reaction has been really positive as well. And to kind of echo what Shona said, it shows that these kind of topics are being recognized by clients and contractors and other colleagues that we work with. So hopefully that continues, and we can keep making further progress.
Great, thank you. Jack, did you want to add anything in this area?
Yeah, 100% agree with what Shona and Nyan just said. But yeah, first step I think to resolving these issues is creating awareness and being able to have the confidence to talk about such issues, which I think as a group we've opened many doors to these conversations, which have enabled awareness and resolution of any issues that have happened in the past. But yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our speakers, Shona, Andrew, Jack, and Nyan. It's been so interesting to hear about how Atkins is handling some of these issues and like you said, raising awareness of ED&I on site and best practice in this area. So we'd be really keen to kind of stay in touch and hear how everything goes and how your thinking evolves in this. Thank you also so much to our attendees for coming and posing so many questions. It's great to see a lot of discussion in this area. That is the end of the webinar today. Thank you so much for logging in, everyone.